I've caught a lot of flack from people, outside the YouTube space at least.
Now, can you dig it?
Hell no, nigga. I can't dig it.
For a few things that I said in my last video, specifically concerning verisimilitude, realism, and the way in which a robust rule set can help define how you as a player interact with the world and immerse yourself. I've said my piece on that, and I'm not going to rehash the argument, but one thing I noticed and wanted to talk about is the differences between realism and verisimilitude, because it seems like a lot of people confuse these two things, especially in how they are regarded within the tabletop space. Although related, these two things are distinct concepts that serve very different purposes. Both aim to create believable experiences for the players, but they do so in uniquely different ways, reflecting entirely different philosophical and practical approaches. Realism is about faithfully representing the actual world, or at the very least an approximation of it within the game's framework. When a game emphasizes realism, it seeks to simulate the complexities and constraints of reality, often grounding it all within scientific principle, historical accuracy, or a simulation of real-world systems. For example, a game striving for realism would likely depict combat in ways that reflects the true lethality and chaos of war. Things like one's ability to kind of stay cool under pressure, like your accuracy fluctuating when shooting a gun under duress. And even more mundane stuff, like how much you can carry, how fast you can move, how long a torch lasts, things along those lines. However, in my experience at least, realism is often a double-edged sword within tabletop games. Now, I'm not saying that I dislike realism. I like it plenty, and my favorite games tend to have a level of realism baked into the rules. But while it adds depth and complexity, I also find that it limits player creativity and at times can bog down the game with excessive detail, which ultimately does the exact opposite of creating an immersive experience, at least for me. The Tomb of Lime Gaming had a great point on this, and I'll let him tell it in his own words.
What feels real to us is not the way the world actually is. It's just what's relevant is the way that we experience it. I think that game designers often think that by modeling the scientific view of the world, that they'll make it more realistic. But because the scientific view of the world is not something that feels real to us, they can end up making it feel less real.
The rest of the video is great, and I highly recommend his content. I'll put a link to the video in the description. To continue though, verisimilitude is not necessarily about replicating reality, but creating the appearance of reality within the context of the game. Verisimilitude focuses on the internal consistency and plausibility rather than strict adherence to real-world accuracy. The goal of it all is to make the game setting feel coherent and believable on its own terms, even if those terms diverge significantly from the real world. This internal consistency doesn't merely serve the narrative of the game, but it enhances immersion for the players by allowing them to inhabit their characters fully and engage with the world as if it were truly real. Verisimilitude, in my opinion, is maintained through a very careful balance of descriptive details, rules, and player agency. The game world must be detailed enough to give the impression of depth and of a world that exists beyond the moment that you're playing, but you can't have too much. Too much detail, I found, overwhelms the players and creates this feeling of a determined world that is only truly meant to be seen and not experienced or engaged with fully. As I said in my last video, similarly, the rules must be robust enough to, at minimum, support the illusion of reality while also accommodating for the random nature of tabletop games. I don't know why this is so controversial, but I'm not going to go into detail because I think I gave a decent enough description for why in my last video, and if you can't parse what I meant, then I just don't think the conversation is there for us to have. That's a general statement, by the way, not meant for any creator mentioned in this video, as we're most likely in agreement, although you can never tell. Either way, in the same vein of accommodating the random nature of tabletop games, player agency also plays a crucial role in this balance. For verisimilitude and immersion to hold, players must feel that their choices matter, and that their actions are represented in a way that respects the established logic of the game world. The key differences between these two concepts lies in their approach to believability. While realism seeks to mirror the real world as closely as possible, sometimes at the detriment of immersion, verisimilitude seeks to make the fictional world believable on its own terms, allowing for fantastical elements that don't necessarily take away from the immersive experience. Philosophically, verisimilitude raises some pretty intriguing questions about the nature of reality and fiction. Often, when people talk about these immersive experiences, there seems to be this weight to it. Like those who have experienced it are a part of an in-group for a select few that engage with something truly profound. I'm going to borrow another clip from some creators and let him tell it in his own words.
Immersion is not about creating an illusion for someone else to witness. It's about the illusion coming to life for you, and for a brief moment becoming real. Experiencing this sort of hyper-reality is almost indescribable. It's the reason so many people throw themselves into the world of acting when the career prospects are literally non-existent. Both the best actors and the best role players chase this dragon to the exclusion of everything else, because once you've experienced it, there is no substitute.
Again, fantastic video, and the link will be in the description. And I agree, immersive role-playing is one of the most unique experiences that you can have. It blurs the line between fiction and reality. The experience of something can be as meaningful, if not more so, than its objective existence. In tabletop games, the world exists only in the collective imagination of the players, and yet despite that, it invokes real emotion and provides the opportunity for moral reflection and personal insight. Now, do not use tabletop games as your therapy. Absolutely not, and do not allow others to impose whatever problems that they may have in life or are going through at the moment at your gaming table. It is not the place for that. Anybody who suggests that is a fucking moron and needs to be weeded out of the hobby immediately. But to get back to it, think about the ways that we experience immersive role-playing and how similar it is to the way that we experience the real world. Your memories of a moment and the things that those memories evoke. Consider the illusion of imminence and how we can assign meaning to objects and experiences despite them being mundane otherwise. How imagination is not just a passive faculty, but an active force that allows us to transcend the limitations of the present and the actual. So yeah, that's the end. I could continue, but that's probably the topic of a future video, and I don't necessarily want to overload this one. Either way, it's nice finding content with a more philosophical approach about the nature of tabletop games on YouTube, so if you enjoyed, then stick around, and if there's anything you disagree with, please feel free to let me know in the comments. Otherwise, thank you for watching, I am Trill, and I hope you enjoyed.